This hour of the Alan Autry Show is sponsored by Sinlaw, the most realistic artificial grass in the Central Valley.
From NFL quarterback to Hollywood to the mayor's office, and now behind the mic at KXEX, this is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, 5 seconds left in the game. You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable. Free at last! Free at
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXE.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat, otherwise known as Two Old Dudes Rambling On and On, with Bob Leone, Bullet Bob. Welcome, Bob.
Hey, Hoss, I'm trying to untangle my cord here.
Well, I'm doing my best imitation of Bullet Bob, the AM DJ of the 60s, bringing it on and getting it on from noon to 1 p.m.
Actually, I had the prime spot, midnight to 6 in the morning.
Is that what your shift was? Folks that don't know, Bob
Midnight to 6. You know what they do with people midnight to 6? You're not good enough for daytime, but you're probably okay for overnight when nobody's listening.
No, some of the most loyal listeners are between midnight and 2. There might be
some of the most weird.
They are loyal. Well, wasn't Wolfman Jack on real late?
Hey, come and get down. It's midnight on y'all out there. Hey.
You know, George Lucas loved him so much, he made him. Remember American Graffiti?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, wait. I just see the phone lines later. That's got to be Jill Biden and Chewy. That's okay. Just hold them. They're okay. We can't get a Taco Tuesday going. They are two loyal listeners. I know we talk about this every Tuesday, but I'm constantly amazed. You know, they say, oh, he's just a right-wing wacko, that old Autry. No. I speak to the heart and soul of every American, whether it be liberal, woke, conservative, in the middle, pedestrian, whatever political party you belong to. I know I speak truth to power and truth to no power. Truth with no power. All right. Anyway, we're waiting for them. They'll hold on the line. But,
Okay.
you know, we talked about this yesterday. I'm really excited about. We'll delve into this other stuff. We got a lot of big breaking, nitty gritty down in the, news. That's just the United Nations meeting. Biden's there. A bunch of other countries aren't showing up. We got Rob Bonta ready to sue the oil company. We got a lot of stuff. But I want to talk about the Fresno State Bulldog football team. Because,
what about them?
Well, they're 3-0.
Yeah.
And Guillermo and I touched on it. Didn't spend a whole lot of time.
Well, that's because he's a Michigan State fan.
Yeah,
and they're mired in misery right now.
He didn't seem that enthused. Now, I know he's a Fresno. He likes it when Fresno State wins.
Yep.
But I was thinking last night after the show, I was just sitting around watching 90 Day Fiancé with my wife and Last Resort, that trash TV I swore I'd never watch. One of the shows I used to walk through and she'd be watching, I look at her with disdain going, you mean you really are entertained by that crap?
When you start watching The Bachelor and all of that,
I won't watch that. They got the old Bachelor on there now.
The old Bachelor?
Yes, they got a guy that's older than us. He's like 70, I think. 71. No, that's our age. But yeah, that's the mature Bachelor.
Oh, my word.
But anyway, I was walking out thinking about the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Here in the Central Valley, the world in the Central Valley is just a little bit better aligned and better off when the Bulldogs are winning, especially football. Basketball, we remember the Boy Grant days, some great teams. The baseball team won the national championship.
Yeah.
But when the football team is doing well, there's just a sense of joy that's just kind of there, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And it certainly creates a lot of conversation, if nothing else, about how they should have won 50-0 instead of 29-0.
Yeah, but isn't that a sign, though, that of a really good team that that can get that many points. And, even though they had I think Arizona State, a former Pac-12 team, shut them out. I don't care who you are. With today's wide open offenses, when you shut a team out, that's an accomplishment.
Big time. Yeah, that's big time.
I'm going to say something's going to probably jinx them, but I just got a feeling that they are going to run the table this year.
Well, a lot of people are saying that.
Now, we said it back when they had David Carr, and they were eighth in the nation, and then a team called Boise State came in when nobody knew Boise was Boise.
Kind of stubbed their toe.
Oh, they beat them. I remember Pat Hill after the game saying, "Hey, you can say what you want. We got beat, but that's a good team over there." Yeah. Talking about Boise State. From then on, Boise State just became, I wouldn't call them a national power, but certainly emerged as a team you did not want to play, whether you were Alabama or anybody else. Yeah. It wasn't a gimme. But I love that quarterback, Mikey Keene.
You love him so much you don't know his last name.
Hey, I get the 70-year-old mulligan, man.
Well, you were that close.
Man, remember those old timers back when we were kids? They'd mispronounce names. Charlie. My name's Charlie. I'm Fred. I'm sorry, Jim.
I thought you was a rose bush.
Yes.
Mikey Keene, yeah.
Good
little quarterback.
He gets rid of the ball, very decisive with his reads. They've got several really good running backs. The offensive line is moving people off the ball. And Guillermo made a good point. Probably the more impressive victory was the one in Purdue on the road. Big Ten team.
Yeah.
But I just like this team. And what better time to have a real monster season than right now with all of this craziness going on. People, universities leaving conferences, rivalries that go back 100 years just being destroyed, left in the wake for the love of money. Real quick question before we get on the heavy stuff. Should they, in your mind, should the Mountain West absorb Oregon State and Washington State and become a Mountain West 2.0 stronger conference, or should the Mountain West team say, "Hey, this Pac-12's got a little bit of name wreck. It's got some value there. Let's all go into the Pac-12 and put a big old chip on our shoulders and go out there and become a Power 5 or Power 6 conference."
Well, that's going to cost them some money if they want to get that name, though, I think.
I thought they would pay them to come. The Pac-12 is not in a position, the officials in the Pac-12, to be picky. I think that lure would be that they would be getting money. Fresno State would be getting money. So I think there's like 50 to 100 million sitting there in the Pac-12 fund, and being, acting like the vultures that they are, all of these teams that left the Pac-12, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and they're coming back and they want that money.
Exactly.
Not only are we going to leave the conference high and dry, we want to take every little scrap from the table. And a court has said, no, this is not right. Let's see how this is divvied out. Because you left the conference. The conference didn't leave you.
Exactly. And they still want to control the money of the conference. So that's why Oregon State and Washington State sued the conference to say, hey, we're still part of the Pac-12. Technically, that's not your money. It's ours, because we're still within the Pac-12.
Well, now, not being a lawyer, don't you think it's a pretty good case?
Yeah, I think it's a great case. You can't have your cake and eat it too, whatever the old phrase. But I think it'd be a great idea for the Mountain West to absorb both of Washington State and Oregon State, create a 12-team league, split divisions, and have the Mountain and the Pacific divisions again, like they did at one time. And I think it'd be great. Or if they could get the name, that'd be even better.
Yeah,
pick the name up and go for it.
I think they're going to get that resolved pretty quick too. I don't think this is going to be a long, drawn-out thing. They have to schedule. They do all this stuff. So hopefully we'll know very shortly. But I think the Bulldogs are sitting in a pretty good situation.
I think they're in a good spot.
The team in the school I feel sorry for, I said it yesterday on the show, is poor old Hawaii. I don't know where they fit into things. I think they're just going to, they're going to be like the side dish that wasn't ordered at the table.
Who ordered that?
Where did that come from? Ordered these rainbows there. And Hawaii, they need to keep their football team. It's anyway, we'll see how it shakes out. Okay, before we get into the stuff, every night before the Taco Tuesday, I'll text some subject ideas to Bullet Bob and Guillermo. Guillermo couldn't be with us today. Hopefully he'll be here with us tomorrow. But This wasn't on. It was just a guideline, just some suggestions. We always are open for breaking news. Zelensky, I look up on the monitor, speaking before the UN as we speak. I think probably asking for some more money. What do you think?
Probably a good.
Wild guess.
Probably a good guess.
Yeah, probably want some planes, some more tanks, and like
the world
said,
must act to defeat Russian aggressor. Okay.
Something was said yesterday, this past week, and it came from probably two of the most diametrically opposite voices that you could imagine politically. One of them was Officer Tatum, who has an hour on this network, who I like. I love to listen to him. Great entertainment and good ideas. Good, solid conservative guy. And the other voice that kind of concurred on this particular subject came from Nancy Pelosi, which a case could be made. There could be no more opposites out there than Officer Tatum and former Speaker Pelosi.
Mm-hmm.
But they both shared the belief that the vice presidential position, Robert Bullitt, do you have any other nicknames?
You covered them all
pretty quick. They both were very emphatically and with passion making the point that the vice president position is really nothing important. That it's a placeholder, to quote Officer Tatum. When Pelosi was asked by Anderson Cooper about Kamala Harris, is she the right person for vice president? And she responded that Joe Biden thinks so, and that's all that matters, which is not really a ringing endorsement on her part.
Not waving the flag.
And when pressed on it, she said, hey, she's more politically astute than people give her credit for, as if it's just about politics as vice president. And then she went on to say the vice president really doesn't do anything. So why worry about it?
What's the big deal then?
Whether she's competent or not. So Tatum and Pelosi were basically saying the same thing. And I'm sitting there shaking my head. And my goodness, Robert, what are they thinking? Because we lived at a time where one of our most beloved presidents was slain, shot dead when we were in the 6th grade. And you had Lyndon Baines Johnson, the vice president, becoming president. And he got us into a war in which 55,000 people were killed, a couple of our friends.
Yeah.
The vice president matters, folks. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt died, and the guy who came in dropped a nuclear bomb. The vice president made a decision, the former vice president, to drop a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. Well, 2 of them on Nagasaki. Dadgum, where do they get off saying, don't worry about the competence of this individual? And with Officer Tatum's situation, it even further astounded me because he was lobbying for Tim Scott to be the vice president. He was getting some pushback from callers. And he was basically saying, hey, listen, it's a placeholder. Don't worry about it. He won't be, challenged or called on to really do anything of importance. Number one, that's pretty insulting to Tim Scott.
I was going to say, so why is he promoting Tim Scott
what is this
if
thing?
it's unimportant?
Well, let me go on this. Isn't this a dangerous mindset to have that, hey, let's don't worry about the vice president, especially when you have the Democratic nominee is 80 years old and probably, if he wins, really odds stacked against him that he will be able to make it through a full 8 more years. And then you have, or 4 more years rather, and you have the presumed Republican nominee, Donald Trump, who's no spring chicken. He's only 3 years younger than Biden. And with good, healthy folks like that, sometimes the bad health comes on you in a hurry. You look great. You're playing 18 holes of golf at 78, 79. Everything's fine. You're riding a bike. You're going to WWE events. You're going to UFC, putting up the fist, waving that orange hair. And the next thing you know, you're in the intensive care unit. I mean, you know that to be true. So anyway, let me go. This bothers me.
Well,
this whole thing that the vice president matters in this election, I think it matters more than ever.
Look at history, as you already indicated. What happened when Lincoln was assassinated?
Exactly.
we had
a guy that gave up Reconstruction. Go ahead.
Andrew Johnson,
Yes.
who was a Southern racist. So, it does matter. And I actually had the opportunity.
I mean,
to see it.
let me just. I don't mean to keep interrupting, Pro, but I'm kind of a little bit semi-triggered by this. I think it really, 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 really matters.
But I happened to see an interview with Kamala Harris the other day, and
the border czar.
Yes, the border czar, and I forget who was interviewing her. And they asked her, well, if President Biden wins re-election, he's this age and he's going to be this age, and his health is this and that. Do you feel confident that you could step in and become president of the United States?
And her answer was,
well, after the cackle, after the laugh.
She laughed at that?
She smiled.
Oh, we got to find that.
But she said, well, yes, I'm very capable of becoming president because of my past history in politics and in California. And first of all, I have a hard time listening to her anyway because she gets on so many different tangents that she never really answers the question. But I thought, my word, this is really scary. If this lady, and obviously she's not going to say she's not competent, but it was really scary. And I think you make a great point that the VP, now we certainly don't wish ill will on anyone. That's not the point. But there are documented instances in American history where the VP has had to step in and become president through unfortunate situations and had to make some hard decisions during that period of time. So I think it's a real critical position. And it's interesting that Tatum would, on the one hand, say, well, it's not that important.
Call it a placeholder.
A placeholder, and then push for Tim Scott to get the position.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a placeholder position.
So don't worry about it that he's incompetent.
Yeah. And I would certainly place Tim Scott above Kamala Harris.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tim Scott is capable of being president.
Sure.
He'd have a learning curve. But why do I say that? Because the man has common sense. He's got a lot of common sense. He was raised by a common sense mother who believed in the Lord. She imparted that common sense to her son. Her son grabbed it, embraced it, and is living the American dream. And he showed in Congress what he can do as a congressman, then as a senator. They all love him. Why? Because he's level-headed. He's probably one of the most level-headed people up on that stage in terms of Republican nominees. But anyway, I just think it's something that's being overlooked. And for the life of me, I don't understand it. As you said, I mean, history, did we learn anything from history? That the vice presidential position is a matter of life and death. I mean, you got to take a really good, hard look at who you put in that office. And you got to make sure that the president of the United States, or the nominees from each party, don't simply make an appointment from a political perspective. So many times, running mates are picked because they need a certain state. It's going to be a close election, so they strategically compromise and say, well, we need this state and that state, this nominee. If we get those two states, we win the presidency. And this individual, although they may be horrible, may be totally unpresidential material, but we're going to pick them because we need to get elected, i.e. Lyndon Johnson, i.e. Kamala Harris, in terms of keeping the minority community intact. It certainly wasn't about her competence. She was so totally ill-prepared. You look at, as you mentioned, Andrew Johnson. You got the biggest, Abraham Lincoln had to pick a racist in order to win the election. Now, I get it, but there's got to be a better way, to pick these folks. And it's going to be up to us to say that position is important. Because I would venture to say, even back in the Lincoln days, before presidents were, got shot from time to time, that it was probably as an obscure position as it is now. I doubt people really gave it that much scrutiny. When you read the history books, you don't see any real analysis on the vice presidential pick.
No.
And But I think in today's day and time, it's so in a nuclear age, so very important that you vet whose finger you're going to have on that button. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about
What are we going to talk about?
Well,
Hoss?
I want to talk about Chicago because they had an amazing thing happen. They had a whole weekend go without anybody shot dead. Now, 24 people were shot, but so far some of them are hanging on. Which is people in Chicago or the politicians are starting to really pull that high. Hey, nobody killed this weekend. We'll be right back. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat with Bullet Bob.
Laughing, dancing, look at you, you're having fun.
Isn't that a sad commentary? That
Chicago?
nobody killed this weekend in Chicago.
Well, we don't know who's hanging on in the ICU. It's sad there.
Lori.
People. And then Chicago just became the first state to codify into law the no cash bail under under a certain level of crime. Yeah. And they said, well, it's these misdemeanors. Well, it's a broken window theory, which is not theory, it's fact. When you let your neighborhood broken windows stay unfixed, you allow the so-called small crimes, like in New York, the subway jumpers, to go free, then the more serious crimes start happening, and it's just a phenomenon that has held up over time. And that's why when Giuliani took over there in New York, he started arresting these subway jumpers, so-called small crimes, and the bigger crimes, assault, murder, that started going down. So we know how to fix it. He had political will to do it.
Well, that's the whole. I saw a video.
Jeremy, do we have that air conditioning on? Thank you, brother.
Did you see the video of the guy? Guy was in a department store and two women were just grabbing items off the rack. I guess it was in some clothing store or something. And this guy had had enough. He'd seen it and he was sick of it. So one of the gals manages to get outside and she's carrying all kinds of stuff. The other gal, he stops. He was carrying purses or something. He grabbed some of the purses and the strap broke and she kind of fell down the ground and he was down there getting ready to pounce on her.
On the lady?
Yeah.
They had video of it?
He didn't hit her or anything, but he was ready to hit her in the next week. Well, he just had enough.
Owners are starting to fight back.
Well, my daughter quit retail because of that. Here in town.
Sigh of relief.
She said, these people come in, they just walk out with stuff, and like clockwork every week. And they couldn't do anything. They were told not to do anything about it. The employees. So she said there was too much stress. She just said, the heck with this stuff. Here I am working to provide for my family, and these people just come in and she said, and if they go to jail, they're out in a week and they're back again.
Well, that stuff's got to end. I mean, at the end, you can't go on and sustain a society like that. It's just how much carnage, how many people have to die, how far does the economy have to seek, how unsafe do the neighborhoods have to get before they say, enough's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then problem with that, there's always an overswinging of the pendulum. That's why you don't want to let it come back. The Weimar Republic before Hitler, people wonder why, Hitler could come to power in a country like Germany. Let's go ahead. We'll go back on the air. Talk about this.
All right, here we go.
This hour of the Alan Autry Show is sponsored by Simlaw, the most realistic artificial grass in the Central Valley.
Welcome back to Alan Autry, No Retreat. Hey, you've been getting your exercise out there, folks. Come on now. Flu season's coming on. Get your flu shot. Get your exercise. Great gym, Valley Fitness and Fort Washington Fitness here in Fresno. Just look them up on the internet. Great gyms, great people there. Whether it's your first time working out or you've been working out your whole life, you're going to love this gym. Valley Fitness and Fort Washington Fitness. Just go on the internet, give them a call, or just drop in and join that club. I'm there, and it's the greatest health club in town. Just like this is the best talk in town. Bullet Bob, Chicago, 24 people shot over the weekend, but not a death reported. They meaning the politicians, are celebrating that. Some kind of achievement. But
well, I guess it is if you look at it from that perspective.
well, the only thing that tells me is they're not as good at shots in Chicago as they used to be. that
You're going to get cards and letters
well,
on that now.
it's true. They just missed. Out of those 24 shot, how many intended to do away with their victim? Probably 90% of them. I'm just drawing that percentage out, but that's what makes sense to me. When will Chicago we talked about when is enough enough? When are the people of Chicago, the people of San Francisco, the people of Baltimore, the people of Seattle, which just happen to have woke left Democratic mayors, New York City, Portland, Oregon. When do the people say we're going to stop putting people like this in office? Because folks out there, the number one thing, the foundation in which everything else is built upon in terms of a healthy city is public safety. You have to feel a sense of safety to go to the grocery store, to go to your kid's football game, to go to the recital, to just, my goodness, take a walk at night, let off some stress. To do all of that, all puckered up because you're afraid that somebody is going to just randomly take your life, like they did this deputy sheriff, bless his heart, in L.A. County a couple of days ago. When are you going to stop putting people like that in office? Or what do you think's going on? That you could keep electing people like that, and DAs who come out and tell you in the election in these cities, look, I'm going to be soft on crime. If they steal less than $1,000 of your stuff, we're not going to punish them.
Don't even call the cops.
And the reason we're doing that, well, here's which I don't understand. It's an alternative universe. And by doing that, by being soft on these criminals, we will make our community safer. Huh?
Well, the progressive.
That's like saying you got a migraine. Let me hit you in your head with this Louisville Slugger.
Let me hit you on the toe. You'll forget about your head.
What?
Well, obviously, the progressive stance in law enforcement and criminality isn't going to work.
Well, maybe this is a better question. Is there even a logical answer to that?
I don't know.
What would make people do insane things like that? Vote to make themselves more in danger.
Less secure.
Vote. Yes.
I can't answer that.
I think I got to use the word that Larry Powell taught me: inculcation, being programmed. You have communities where the people have been brainwashed to such an extent that I don't know if they like the party they're voting for, that they just think the democratic principles, of unsafe streets, math being racist, having kids trapped and failing schools, the kids that need education the most, open borders, that they really embrace those ideas, or they just hate Republicans so much that when they go in the voting booth, I watched Sean Penn last night, and Sean Penn and I did a movie. I like Sean Penn. He's talking to Sean Hannity about all the things that Biden's not doing now for the Ukraine. He spent a lot of money, but Penn thinks they haven't done enough.
Well, wasn't he over there for a few months? Well, Sean Penn, wasn't he in the Ukraine?
Yes, he was over there when it started, when the whole thing started. Yeah, but he's got some of these really hawkish, like Lindsey Graham, right-wing Republicans that are for as long as it takes, giving them everything they need, tanks, planes, for as long as it takes. That's Sean Penn's position. But he came out and said, I don't know if I could ever vote Republican. I'll probably never vote Republican. Well, what if this issue means so much to you, and you have a Republican who says, I'm going to give them everything they need, an issue that you're willing to risk your life for, going up against a Democrat who's not for that, you would simply not vote for the Republican because they're Republican. Yeah. I think as insane as that mindset is, I think it's out there in more of a percentage than we think it would shock you. There's no other explanation.
I can tell you.
Go ahead.
Our good friend, who we both know well,
Yes.
would never in a million years, and I would bet my house on it, ever vote for a Republican. Ever. It doesn't matter what the status of the economy is. It doesn't matter what the world situation is, the border situation. It would not matter. He would never vote for a Republican or a more conservative candidate. May not have to be just a Republican, but a more conservative candidate, because he is a hard left progressive. And he told me, even though I'm left, I'm right.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of folks that you're talking about here, who would never, ever, even if there was only one person running, they still wouldn't vote for that person.
And that's why the founding.
And there's a lot of those folks out there.
And there's the founding fathers, say what you want about it. The Constitution, Declaration of Independence, brilliant documents if you value freedom and individual liberties. But many of those founding fathers, George Washington being chief of them, warned that generation that he was in, but also generations to come, to beware of political parties, the formation of political parties. When we won independence, we didn't have parties. We were just Americans looking for independence. And we believed in individual liberties. We didn't believe in the concept of a king controlling every aspect of your life. And you had people willing to die for that. 1/3 of the people in America willing to die for that. And with the help from the French of all countries, this country gained its independence. But Washington said the reason he was so adamantly against parties, he could see people becoming more loyal to the party than they are to the country.
Well, there's the rub. That's it in a nutshell.
And isn't that what's happening?
That's it in a nutshell, don't you feel?
Well, I feel, and I think it's a step further.
Oh, okay.
I think he's absolutely right. I think we're there. I think we've been there for a long time. I don't think we were there in the 60s. Even during the Vietnam War, you saw Republicans and Democrats working together all up until, probably the mid-2000s when, and I think that's what I hold against President Obama. And not because he's black. Don't hit me with that. Don't insult me with that. There's his ideology. I'd vote for Ben Carson for president in a heartbeat. I'd vote for Larry Elder for president in a heartbeat. I'd vote for the guy that just got the job on Fox News, Lawrence, for office. But there's this belief and theory out there, in particular among aimed towards the woke left. Now, the Republicans and the conservatives certainly have their zealots, the Tea Party, January 6th, all of that, absolutely have their zealots. But the woke left, in absence of having or accepting a traditional religion, whether that be Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jewish faith, whatever, there's a large portion of the Democratic Party that, if not atheists, are strongly agnostic to the point of not belief. So you got to believe in something. People have to worship something. And they get into politics and they start worshiping their ideology and treating their ideology like a religion. Now, why is that dangerous? Because I would like to think, if somebody had a gun to my head and said, renounce Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're going to die, I'd say, well, pull the trigger. I would like to think that. I would die for my faith. And most people of faith would. The problem when you have a secular faith and you believe that, or it becomes a religion to you, you believe something has become evil, the antithesis of your good religion. This is good. Open borders, having, critical race theory, don't punish criminals, everything, we're living in, this utopia. That's what we're trying to create. And if you don't go along with it, and America hasn't gone along with it. In fact, they've gone opposite. It's a patriarchy. It's white dominated. All the institutions are dominated by racism, white people, old people. So it must be torn down, destroyed, and start all over again. And if that means I die with it and you die with it, so be it, because it's our religion. We need to destroy it all and start over again and build a Marxist utopia, which has never worked, but they're willing to do that. That's why I look, and that's the only possible sane, it's insane, that type of belief, Robert, but that's the only explanation that I can think of. It's way beyond politics. They've become absolutely more patriotic to their woke left principles than they are to the health of the country. And if the whole country, and that's why they're saying tear it down, burn it down, living in this fantasy world, that if everything, quote unquote, traditionally American went away, including the family unit, there was no more mother and father. You didn't have any of that evil stuff. You could start from scratch and build a utopia.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, am I really off base on this?
Well,
I
don't think it's off base at all. And again, I'll I don't know if he's listening. Probably not. I'll go back to our good friend. The whole country was founded on racism. It's still a racist country. It's not as good as it should be, and it never was as good as everybody said it was. 1619 Project is a great historical research book. And of course, that's been debunked by everybody and their brother. But just so, always pointing out all of the problems and the issues from the past. And I've always, I'm too old to look back too far, other than, at our friends and our good times. But you can't be doing that and move that to the present and relate that to the present day. I don't think. We're still a work in progress. We're always going to be a work in progress. But tearing all of our basic institutions down is going to create nothing but chaos. Well, you're seeing it already.
Well,
you're seeing it now, Hoss.
You're seeing it,
look
Robert.
At look at the borders. Look at the economy. It's going crazy because of this. Biden announced when he came into office that he was literally, trying to shut down all the oil companies. And you see where that's led us as far as our gas issues and the cost of the oil that we have to buy now when we had a reserve last time. And so you see the things happening to what people? The middle class. Well, that's your largest number of folks in any society who pay the freight on taxes, the biggest consumer group, all of those things. So if you make those folks, if you destroy their livelihood, you make them dependent on the government, and the government says, we know it's best for you. Here's what it is. You're all going to live in high-rise apartments, and you're all going to have to take public transportation or walk or ride a bike or whatever it is. There'll be no combustion engines available. We're not going to do that. And you're seeing it happen now. And the lawlessness, the breakdown of the society as far as criminality and lawlessness, that's when everything blows up. And now you have who becomes the police force? The army or the national police force in order to maintain order in the streets.
And that's exactly what happened in Germany, the Weimar Republic, before Hitler took over. It had become so liberalized, so woke, that there wasn't really a crime that'd be committed that the courts would prosecute. I mean, you just go look it up. It was so dangerous that, a mother or grandmother couldn't walk down the sidewalk in the street and go get a loaf of bread from the local bakery without being mugged. It was just total 100% chaos with a lot of the woke ideas that are popular today with the Democrat Party. And Hitler came along and says, you know what? I'm gonna make it safe for grandma to go outside. I'm going to make it where when she goes and wants to take a walk, your 80-year-old grandmother wants to go down and buy a loaf of bread and listen to the birds sing and breathe fresh air. We're going to protect her. Don't you worry about it. Now, that's pretty tempting for a family. And they made a pact with the devil. Why? Because conditions had deteriorated so far. As Thomas Sowell said, there's no such things as wins or losses. There's just trade-offs. They made a trade-off. And do you really blame them? Put yourself in that position. You're in Germany, in free Nazi Germany, and you're looking over your shoulder at everything. Inflation has gone crazy where you can't even afford a cup of coffee. Chaos in the streets. And then here comes these SS guys in the brown shirts saying, we're going to clean this mess up for you. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I understand how an intelligent country like Germany, who leads the world in scientific discoveries and academic scholars and philosophers for hundreds of years, and people look at it in amazement, say, how did they descend so far that they let a guy like Hitler? Because the basics, they were betrayed by the basics, public safety, the economy. They decided they didn't keep their house in order, and they implemented this crazy utopian stuff that destroyed them. And that's why you have, in Karl Marx, people make this mistake. And it's a very important thing that you understand about Marxism, because it's the root of a lot of what's going on here on the left. They're trying to oppose on America and doing it quite successfully and quite rapidly, by the way. Freedom of speech was not, or lack of, usually is applied to Karl Marx as his basic tenet. You got to control speech. You got to control the media. That's how you get the communist message through, and you train the youth and you program the youth. All of those are true. But his number one thing that he said, in order to have that utopia, that communist utopia, that Marxist world that we all want, you can't have private property. Look it up. That was his foundation. Nobody, no private person can own anything. The government has to own everything. No private property. So when you look at all of this, the biggest job created last year was the federal government. They just hired 87,000 new IRS agents. Look here in the People's Republic of California. They've just hired tons more people. The biggest employer is the state of California. They want to control everything, and that is the difference between it's kind of a fascist communist hybrid. In fascism, you have private enterprise, but the government runs it. That's what China has. They have a communist, fascist, capitalist type of hybrid that's beginning to fall apart, by the way. Certain things don't mix. But in essence, the country, the government is controlling everything. Although you let some private people go in and make the everyday decisions, push comes to shove, government has the final say in what you sell, how you sell it, and all of that. One of the big difference between fascism, which is about thought control and all that, and pure communism. That's why the fascists and the communists kind of went at each other in World War II. There were some a lot of similarities, but some fundamental differences in ideology.
Well, the fact that Germany invaded Russia was not didn't really help much.
That didn't help much either. And,
but there are fundamental differences in the philosophies of those two. What do you call them?
Well, just political beliefs, whatever you want. The bottom what started this conversation is America, you got to wake up. And it's going to be people on the left. The woke religious zealots that have developed this secular religion that worships the climate New Green Deal initiative and would just rather die, for that cause, to have America completely destroyed for that cause. Because I got news for you. There's a thing called BRICS being put together. The rest of the world, you don't buy this stuff that everybody's on America's side in Ukraine, that everybody wants America in their country. That is an absolute bald-faced lie. Did you see the countries that didn't even bother to show up at the UN? China, Russia, India, even France and UK didn't show up, didn't even bother to show up. Right now, the big battleground is Africa. Why? Because all that stuff that goes in that phone you use every day, it goes in that car you drive every day, those precious metals coming out of Africa. South Africa, that's why they're part of BRICS. That's the S in that coalition, BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And let me tell you, about 99% and maybe 100% of the African nations, they don't want anything to do with the country that doesn't believe in a mom and a dad. You talk about a family-oriented country. Just spend a little time over there. And by the way, they want to industrialize. They would rather have a little dirtier air and maybe have the planet not live a couple of hundred years longer and have their child not die of starvation by the time they're 2 years old. We are telling them, don't industrialize. Don't become like us. Don't be a job creator. We'll let you have agriculture. Let us go get all your precious metals, but don't industrialize. Why? Because you're going to pollute. The atmosphere can't handle it. The poor planet can't handle it. We're going to keep our factories going on over here and polluting. But you have to embrace the new Green Deal. Well, we can't embrace the new Green Deal. Why? Well, we don't have enough money. We're living in this hut. We can't really afford a Tesla to drive out and go hunt for our food today out in the jungle. And by the way, you see those two kids over there that look like bone racks? That's my 1.5-year-old daughter and my 2.5-year-old son. And I love them as much as you love your kids. And these other countries are saying, we're going to let you develop. We're going to let you build factories. We're going to let you make things. And that's what's happening. And let me tell you, they're going to win. Whoever takes Africa, and we used to be welcome in Africa. Why? Because we sent missionaries over there. We brought food. We brought opportunity. We had people putting fresh water in pipelines. We still do. But not to the extent. The government should be all over that, helping these non-NGOs deliver fresh water to all of these countries. We're not doing that. We're trying to ram the new Green Deal down their throat, the Paris Accords. Basically saying you don't measure up. That's exactly what Obama was telling the predominantly black countries of Africa. That's why I look at him and I said, what a betrayal. I mean, that's your brethren. The father, the patriarchal side of your family came from there. And you're telling them they don't measure up to be able to be industrialized and become part of the economy of the world. How racist. And what's happened, you wonder, why are these countries, one right after the other, signing deals with BRICS? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Let me tell you, we better start marketing liberty and marketing opportunity, Bob, a lot better, or we're going to get so far behind. Let me tell you, this BRICS plays a different game.
Yeah.
Russia, you know how they deal with their opposition? Navalny, they poison him. They just blow up old Prigozhin out there.
Put him in a plane. And
Saudi Arabia is part of that.
Crash.
Saudi Arabia is part of that coalition. They got rid of Khashoggi. You have this guy, Prime Minister Modi. Now Canada, Trudeau says that Modi had this dissident in Canada killed from the Sikh community.
Well,
Modi's
talked
denying
about
it.
that before.
So you've got
about what's happening here. It's not as dramatic as that, but it's still the same concept. Us.
Well, what's comforting?
Eliminate your opposition. We're doing it a little differently here. We're not.
That's comforting to know that the CIA has never assassinated anybody in a foreign country, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
our CIA would never assassinate somebody in a foreign country, would they?
No. But you're seeing it here, and I think we could spend a whole show just talking about the free speech and media and how that has such a great influence. And look, this is not new. The media has always had some kind of influence, even going back to the days of, particularly of Abraham Lincoln. But obviously with the 24-hour news cycle and all the technology now, it's instantaneous. It's really nothing new, but we could spend a whole show just talking about the free speech and what happens when countries decide that that's not a real good idea. And, going back to Germany in the 40s.
And our whole point is, when are you going to wake up? And it's on the left. We need you. The I'm an independent. I'm an American. I've seen what parties can do to the psyche of people. It ain't pretty. Just be an American. Vote with your common sense. of what's good for the greater good, really, truly for the greater good. Because you know what's really concerning to me is most people on the left, and when it happens on the right, it's just as bad, but there's more happening on the left. The voters, like our friend, smart, they know they're being lied to about the Hunter Biden situation, Joe Biden's age, all of these policies, the new Green Deal, that how it's working and it's just going to transform the economy for the better. They know that the schools are just fine where the minority kids are going to school when they're not. The left, the people, the Democrats that voted for Joe, they know they're being lied to. And they just don't care. Let me qualify. They just don't care enough to make the difficult decision to do the right thing. How did we get here? How did we get to the point where lying didn't mean anything? We ran a president out of office for saying, I didn't know anything about these 2-bit burglars breaking into the Democratic National Headquarters to steal some papers. I lied about that. And you had Republicans, Democrats, us, and college students saying, you got to go. Why? Because you lied to us about that little thing. Now you look at it. You would have people on the left praising the guy going, well, you know, it was a petty thing. And hey, we don't put anybody.
Didn't hurt anybody.
Did they steal less than $1,000 worth of documents? Okay, well, come on, Nixon.
Good to go.
Let them go. My goodness. Goodness gracious. What are you? Just one of big ogres? You just hate Quakers. You just want to, you got Quaker phobia, and put Nixon behind bars. He was a Quaker, But you get what I'm saying. Our morals, our reverence of which we deal with honesty, integrity, the virtues of men and women have degraded to such a point. We don't care. Now, how do we get that back? I don't know, but I'm telling you, I'll go as far as to say it's the key to our survival as a country. If we want America to survive in the rest of this century, being anywhere near what we've been in the past, which is a bastion of freedom for the rest of the world. Bobby, thanks for joining me.
All right, Hoss. Always a pleasure.
God bless you all. God bless America. Just do your best. Let God do the rest. And we will see you tomorrow on Big Wednesday. Bye-bye now.
Just sing